Howdy again everyone, and today I'm taking a look at the new Pergear 12mm f2 Mark II. It's a manual focus APS-C lens for Fuji X, Sony E, Nikon Z, Canon RF and a micro 4/3 mirrorless camera systems. This new Mark II version is 25% smaller and 70 grams lighter than Pergear's original lens. Its price is very low as well, only $169 or £140 here in the UK, and anyone purchasing the lens soon after its launch can get a 10% early bird discount too, which makes this lens potentially a real bargain. Well, if it's any good, that is. I'd like to thank Pergear for sending me one of these little lenses on Sony E Mount for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review. Like with every other lens, I'll be looking at both its strengths and its weaknesses. 12mm is a lovely ultra-wide angle on APS-C, the full frame equivalent of about 18mm. Here's what the image looks like if you shoot on a full frame camera, by the way. I know people like to see that, and obviously there's vignetting. f2 is a very lovely, very bright aperture for such a wide-angle optic. That enables you to get some noticeably out-of-focus backgrounds in your images which, in ultra-wide-angle pictures, do look great. But in my tests, I noticed that the lens's light transmission seemed to be about the same between f2 and f2.8. I wasn't really getting faster shutter speeds at f2, although the bokeh was deeper and general image quality was a little better. So f2 on this lens is useful for getting some nice out-of-focus backgrounds, but not so much for getting faster shutter speeds. Well, that was just my finding anyway. As you can see, the lens itself is tiny and, at 230 grams, fairly lightweight, but its body is made of metal and it feels really tough. The lens does not feature weather sealing, but that's hardly a surprise at this price point. The lens's main control is its focus ring. Remember, this is a manual focus optic, not autofocus. It turns smoothly and precisely, but rather than having a ribbed finish to it, it features a protruding thumb notch on the bottom for you to turn with your fingers. I personally don't like that approach so much. I prefer a normal shape to my focus rings, as you then don't have to search around for some notch, but it's something you do get used to quite quickly. Here you can see that the lens suffers from a small amount of focus breathing, zooming into your subject just a little as you focus more closely. Something else I should mention is that my copy of the lens was only just able to focus to infinity. I had to force that focus ring right around to the very end, so do check yours if you buy one to make sure. The aperture ring in front of the focus ring has two of those thumb notches. It turns with nice positive clicks at every f-stop, which is great for stills photography, although not so great for video work. I prefer the clicks myself, so that makes me happy. For some reason, f11 seems to be missing on there, forcing you to try and find it between the clicks. The lens comes with a screw-in hood which accepts 62mm front filters, always helpful on an ultra-wide-angle optic, although try to use filters with a thin profile. I personally quite like Marumi Fit and Slim polarizing filters. The lens also comes with a screw-on lens cap, I hate screwing those things on, as well as a handy little carry case. Overall, there are a few odd little things going on with this lens's design, but it does seem to work properly, and I'm especially glad to get that 62mm filter thread. Alright then, let's take a look at image quality now. I'll be testing it today on a 24MP Sony APS-C camera. In-camera corrections are not available with this lens. Something I don't normally mention in my videos is that, in my work behind the scenes, I don't just take test chart pictures with lenses, I test at longer distances too, especially with wider angle lenses, and on rare occasions, a lens will perform much better at longer distances, and that's the case with this Pergear lens. It seemed to hate my test chart, where image corners were always really soft. I'll be doing a close-up image quality test in a minute, but seeing as you normally shoot ultra-wide lenses a bit further from your subject, here's my backup test chart. It's a bit bigger, as you can see. In the middle of the image, straight from f2, we are seeing excellent sharpness and good contrast. Corner image quality is noticeably soft, a little worse than its competitors, but still just about usable. At f2.8 and f4, we get gradual improvements in corner brightness and sharpness. At f5.6 though, and especially f8, they suddenly get very sharp. The corners stay this sharp down to f11, although at f16, a little softness begins to creep in due to diffraction. Overall, this lens is a little softer in its image corners than its more expensive competitors, but it's not much worse. I wish it were a little sharper at bright apertures, but at least the middle always looks great, and the whole image does sharpen up nicely at f5.6. Okay, let's take a look at distortion and vignetting. Impressively, the lens projects almost no distortion at all here, which is great to see. At f2 though, vignetting is very strong, and at f2.8 it's not really that much better. At f4 those corners get a bit brighter, but even at f5.6 there's no further improvement, so you will probably want to correct that perennial vignetting when editing your images. Next, close-up image quality, and this thing can focus down to 18 centimeters. At f2, that close-up image quality is a little softer. f2.8 is quite sharp though, and at f4 we get perfect close-up sharpness and contrast. Next, work against bright lights. A huge weakness of the tested lens, this thing shows a ton of flaring and glaring when bright lights are anywhere near your picture, which is a bit of a pain when doing wide-angle photography on a sunny day. Stopping down to f4, as I do here, will reduce some of the worst of the glaring, but it still looks pretty bad. While we're working in the dark, let's take a look at chroma levels. There's surprisingly little chroma smearing to be seen here, even at f2. f2.8 looks about the same, but f4 sees a tiny improvement. Anyway, let's zoom out and look for sun stars. They begin to emerge at f5.6, and at f8, f11 and f16 they get strong. Next, bokeh. I'm glad to say that this lens's bokeh looks nice and smooth in virtually every situation. And related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. Even at f2, impressively, there's nothing really to see here. Overall, this lens is a classic example of you getting what you pay for. The lens is not as sharp as its competitors, it has one or two other image quality issues, and I'm not sure what was going on with its light transmission at f2, but its price is very low indeed, and it can certainly capture some nice images for you. It could be handy for 4K video work as well. Okay, thanks for watching everyone. Just a reminder, be sure to check out the playlists on this channel to find reviews of lenses for your specific camera system, and also a special thanks to my Patreon supporters who make such a difference in keeping this channel going and get all kinds of exclusive bonus content. Ciao for now, everyone.